Hello, 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 hello.
A very good morning to all our guests who are assembled here. Shri Manoj Singh, Additional Chief Secretary, will be joining us shortly, and we will be commencing the program at 10:30. My request all of you to kindly put your mobiles on silent mode so that we don't get disturbed during the program. Thank you. Good morning. Once again, I would request all of us to kindly keep the mobiles on silent mode. Thank you. Good morning. I would request all our guests to please be seated in their positions. Our chairman sir will be reaching here shortly. Thank you. Good morning, all. Our chairman sir has arrived in the building and will be joining us shortly. Good morning. Uh, Good morning. I, Dr. Sriram Uppulingam, faculty member and in charge Center for Climate Change, uh, Bankers Institute of Rural Development. Wish you all a very good morning and extend a very warm welcome to our chief guest, Sri Shaji KV, Chairman, National Bank for Agriculture and Rural Development, uh, Additional Chief Secretary, Sri Manoj Singh, Government of Uttar Pradesh, guests of honor, Mrs. Rajeshri Ray from Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, Government of India, Mr. Mohammed El Khaved, uh, Program Coordinator from GIZ, India, distinguished panel members and dignitaries from various banks, government departments, research institutions, NBFCs, MFIs, civil society organizations, and all our colleagues who have joined the event online. Uh, I'm very happy to share with all of you that the Center for Climate Change that has been set up in this campus by National Bank of Agriculture and Rural Development in association with GIZ has recently completed 5 years. It is on this center has been set up with a primary objective of providing focus attention to climate finance, especially in the areas of capacity building, policy advocacy, and knowledge management. Uh, it is on this very occasion we are organizing this roundtable on the way for taking climate finance forward, a need for innovative solutions. Before we move ahead, I would just share with you a small film on a very a nicely set up experiential learning lab on climate finance, which is housed in this very campus.
क्या आपने कभी जलवायु परिवर्तन के प्रभाव के बारे में जानने, समझने की कोशिश की है? या कि इसने कैसे समुदायों और समाजों को प्रभावित किया है? या किस तेजी से ये हमारे ग्रह को संपूर्ण विनाश की ओर धकेल रहा है? क्या हम संकट की तात्कालिकता को महसूस कर सकते हैं? अनुभव और चिंतन की मदद से सीखने से प्रकृति के सिद्धांतों और ज्ञान के साथ हमारा बेहतर जुड़ाव होता है। परिवर्तनकारी समाधान जैसे सीखने समझने के लिए अनुकूल वातावरण, व्यक्तियों और संस्थानों का क्षमता निर्माण हमें आने वाले संकट की चुनौतियों से निपटने में सक्षम बनाता है। आइए चलें, साथ मिलकर सीखें और अनुभव करें। लखनऊ स्थित बर्ड कैंपस के परिसर में बनी लर्निंग लैब ऑन क्लाइमेट चेंज एक अद्वितीय और कल्पनाशील रूप से डिजाइन की गई प्रयोगशाला है। ये प्रयोगशाला प्रतिभागियों को न केवल त्रासदी की व्यापकता एवं इससे होने वाले घातक प्रभावों, जिनमें जीवन के हर रूप के अस्तित्व को लेकर खतरे भी शामिल हैं, से अवगत करवाती है, बल्कि अनूठे और नवीनतम तरीकों से जलवायु परिवर्तन का मुकाबला करने के लिए भी प्रेरित करती है। अब हम इस अनोखी लैब में प्रवेश कर रहे हैं, जो भारत में अपनी तरह की एकमात्र प्रयोगशाला है। लर्निंग लैब को 3 अलग-अलग भागों में विभाजित किया गया है। सबसे पहला भाग जलवायु परिवर्तन का अनुभव करने के साथ शुरू होता है। दूसरा भाग समाधान को लेकर है। तीसरा और अंतिम भाग एक्शन के बारे में चर्चा करता है। इन तमाम भागों से गुजरने के बाद हमें जलवायु परिवर्तन से होने वाली तबाही का अच्छा खासा आकलन मिल जाता है। साथ ही हम जान पाते हैं कि हम अपनी धरती को इन आगामी खतरों से कैसे बचा सकते हैं। लैब की सैर के अनुभव से हमें पता चलता है कि कैसे मानव जाति ने ग्लोबल वार्मिंग में योगदान दिया। लैब के अंदर की हिलती डुलती छवियों, आकृतियों और ध्वनियों से भरा माहौल हमारे अंदर उमड़ती भावनाओं को उजागर करता है। समाधान तलाशते हुए हमें पता चलता है कि जलवायु परिवर्तन एक जटिल समस्या है। इन सभी उपायों ने धरातल पर अपने सकारात्मक प्रभाव छोड़े हैं, जिसके कारण कई व्यावहारिक परिवर्तन संभव हुए हैं, लेकिन वे पर्याप्त नहीं हैं और इसको लेकर अभी बहुत कुछ किया जाना बाकी है। लैब का तीसरा और अंतिम भाग पर्यावरण के प्रति हमारे दृष्टिकोण के बारे में बताता है और हमें सुकून से बैठकर हमारे सामने विशाल संकट का सामना करने के लिए विचार करने पर मजबूर करता है। हमें एक बेहतर भविष्य के लिए इस संकट पर तत्काल और तेजी से कार्यवाही करने के लिए प्रेरित करता है। लैब से प्रतिभागियों को जलवायु परिवर्तन संबंधी अनुभव आधारित परिशिक्षण प्राप्त होता है। प्रतिभागी निश्चित रूप से जलवायु परिवर्तन के महाविनाश का सामना करने और इसको टालने के लिए व्यक्तिगत और सामूहिक रूप से एक बेहतर और अधिक जागरूक इंसान के रूप में बाहर निकलते हैं और यही इस प्रयोगशाला का मकसद है।
धन्यवाद। I now request our director, Sri Nirupam Mehrotra, to kindly present the welcome address.
थैंक यू। सर्वप्रथम सभी को मैं डायरेक्टर बर्ड निरुपम मल्होत्रा की ओर से और बर्ड की तरफ से सबको नमस्कार। आप सबका स्वागत है इस परिचर्चा में। ऑन बिहाफ ऑफ बर्ड लखनऊ, आई हार्टली वेलकम शाजी केवी, चेयरमैन नबार्ड, श्री मनोज सिंह जी, ACS गवर्नमेंट ऑफ यूपी, मैडम रे, इकोनॉमिक एडवाइजर गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया, Shri Mohammad Kaveer from GIZ, Shri Ashish Tiwari ji, Government of UP, and other distinguished panelists, which include policymakers from RBI and bankers. We will be discussing as a panel at that time, and this is the inaugural session. I welcome you all. I will be failing in my duty. I really heartily welcome on behalf of again Bird. All the participants here. In fact, we are so overwhelmed that today we have among us who are deliberating here all the bankers, especially all the commercial banks, the cooperative banks, the regional rural banks, financial institutions from the microfinance institutions, their federation members, government officials, senior scientists from various research institutions, and uh, from policy think tanks, my colleagues from NABARD who are here, and various stakeholders, NGOs. So I think it's really one of its kind where we have in this hall everybody in the spectrum who works on climate and climate change and climate finance, state government officials. And I'm really also happy to announce that we are also on online. Also, I welcome from the YouTube channel all those participants who have joined online. In this roundtable, if it was, I was just thinking, if this roundtable was being held a couple of years ago, perhaps the issues we would be discussing would be very different. We would have the luxury of time, but today climate change is here and stares us in the face. As we know, climate change in the context of agriculture in India is entwined with the livelihoods of a vast majority dependent on agriculture. Definitely. The good news is that we are much better informed, aware of the impact, and we don't have to see much back. In fact, the last 15 days itself across the country in various parts, the impact we can sort of not only visualize, some have even felt. Its pathway, issues involved, and are also aware in some measure of the likely solutions or some solutions. But as economists would say, everything has a cost, and solutions too have a cost that we need to pay for. And it is here that climate finance really presents us with both opportunities as well as challenges to address. The challenges can be converted into opportunities through the vehicle of innovation. And it is in this context, I think we need to think in terms of innovative terms of the existing solutions and existing mechanisms. Although we are all aware, the issues with climate finance identified globally are that it is inadequate, it is skewed towards debt finance, whereas the need of concessional finance is more, especially from the angle of emerging and developing countries. Adaptation finance requires a push, and the need for innovative financing instruments which can bring down the cost of capital. I think this is somewhere I think climate finance needs to focus more adaptation finance, how we can bring the cost of financing capital. I'm sure that we will have an enriching discussion on this. The encouraging aspect is that there are number of initiatives currently underway at the grassroots level, which may not be labeled as climate finance, quote unquote, but are in fact climate finance. If we look at the drip irrigation in terms of water saving technologies and all, banks and financial institutions have a long history of now doing this and the financing terms. So they may not be really labeled in that quote unquote in that, but it is being done. And it is in the portfolio of banks and financial institutions in that fashion. However, there are a number of similar technologies given the context, that are awaiting recognition and support from banks and financial institutions for financing as climate change and needs to be adapted and scaled up. Maybe there is a case like maybe taxonomies need to be developed and classified, and what we know as MRVs like monetary reporting and verification system can be thought of, can be made more robust if they exist, how they can be adapted also through the digital medium. Maybe we need to leverage better the existing mechanisms to increase the financing as well as bringing down the cost. I think, and in my view, one of the aspects that has not got adequate attention is the climate finance discourse. It is the need to focus on capacity building of various stakeholders. And if we talk about financing at terms, then maybe bankers, financial institutions, there is a need for increased focus. The Climate Change Center, which is actually, we are commemorating the 5 years of the Climate Change Center here by NABARD, which has been housed in Bird. I am confident though we provide focused training on some of these aspects, I am confident that this center can play a much larger role in the coming years with the state of the art training facility available for experiential learning. We saw a short video of that. I am really tempted today, since we are having lot of bankers and financial institutions here today, I am tempted to share with you the fact and that in the year 98-99, in this very campus, in the very, very initial work of what we know as the Kisan credit card was emanated through a small study, and that changed the way we looked at agricultural credit in India today. Today's roundtable is fortunate to regulator, policymakers, senior government officials, government functionaries, implementers, development financial institutions, banks, bankers, and financial institutions, grassroots organizations, even technology companies which work in this space and in the working in the place of climate space and climate finance. One could not have asked for more. And I welcome you once again to Bird and look forward to a day of enriching discussions. Thank you very much.
Uh, Thank you, sir. And like uh, Nirupam Mehrotra sir, I just pointed out, to commemorate this occasion, we are pleased to be informed that Bird in association with GIZ has brought out two publications. The first one presents a snapshot of the various initiatives that have been taken up by this center in the last 5 years. I would request our distinguished guests to kindly release the document. So, Thank you very much, sir. The second document that we are releasing today, as our director sir has already informed, that a number of solutions, innovative solutions, are available globally. Bird in association with GIZ has prepared a compilation of such innovations which have scope for replication and upscaling in India. So that is the second document I'm requesting our distinguished guests to release. A copy of both the publications are already available in your kit and will be shortly available on our website also. Thank you, sir. Uh, I now invite Mr. Mohammed Al Khawat, Program Director and Cluster Coordinator GIZ, to share his views on the occasion. Mr. Mohammed Al Khawad has more than 20 years of experience across the globe in environmental and climate policy. Mr. Khawat, sir.
Thank you very much. Taking climate finance forward. I'm very happy to be here. I'm very happy to have spent the night at the Bird Campus. Um, I feel like a student a bit, back to my roots, seeing those who are coming in and going to be trained in this important place on something I think that's really crucial, and that is the title, Taking Climate Finance Forward. I think we're also very proud as GIZ to have been part of this, especially my colleagues, um, of this journey with Bird and with NABARD. So first of all, greetings, of course, to Mr. Chairman, Mr. Shaji Kive. Greetings to, of course, Mr. Manoj Singh, Additional Chief Secretary, Department of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, Government of UP. Always good to see you. Mrs. Rashi Ray, Economic Advisor, Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, Government of India. We are in constant exchange. Mr. Ashish Tiwari, Secretary, Department of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, Government of UP. I follow on LinkedIn. Mr. Nirupa Mehrotra, thank you very much, Director of Bird, for your hospitality. And Mr. Dinesh P., General Chief Manager of the Climate Change Vertical of NABARD, the new Climate Change Vertical of NABARD, and very happy to interact here. We at GIZ have been in India for quite a couple of years as German Development Corporation, and we have a strong relationship, I think, the two countries. There's been a development at the moment. Lots of the cooperation goes into energy and energy transition. Um, most of it is loans coming also from our sister organization, KfW, which many of you will know. So that's a main focus area. The second one is on urban development. And the third one is on environment, climate, agriculture, and biodiversity. And this is where I stand for and I work for, and we are here as well. So in this journey, NABARD, interestingly, has always been a part of it, created in 82. Interesting enough, from the 500 colleagues we have here in India, the senior colleagues have one way or the other all been associated with NABARD, worked on a program, or with the offices in the States. So very happy for that, and very happy, of course, to work together with Bird and on the Climate Center. We have in the past worked with NABARD a lot together with KfW in the area of natural resource management, supporting the development of business models on NRM. And of course, that included and covered also adaptation measures at the end of the day. We've also worked on digital tools for FPOs together with NABARD, and we're very happy in future to work with NABARD on the new JIVA program, which has been launched and where the aspect of natural farming does stand out. So promoting finance flow to climate is a new area of intervention. It's a new area. On top of that, tackling something more complicated to tackle, which is that of adaptation to climate change. This is not an infrastructure project. These are complex processes. And the need for that is pretty clear, as we all know. We have the extreme weather events, we have the unseasonal rains, we have the glaciers as the strongest indicator of climate change that are disappearing in the Himalayas. So the need for action is there. And we now agree that we need to make sure that capital does flow into financing adaptation and adapting to climate change. We cannot just distribute public money and taxpayers' money. We have to change the finance flows. Yeah, and important for us as GIZ is, and I think for our partners as well, is that this has to be guided by the needs and the realities of the financial markets. We have to be very close to them, and my colleagues have been in the past organizing a series of dialogue workshops with the market players to identify these potentials. And in this process, they have come to see technologies in agriculture as a main focus on enabling access to finance. So we have some examples. I'd like to name three where this has happened. The first one is around millets and a millet processing facility in Mandala, in MP. And this now was very timely, of course, because India's initiative on the Year of Millets is a very important one and feeds into this initiative. We have other, and second example is about access technological solutions in adaptation. And they're interesting. The work is together with startups. And startups, I think, are an important venue for this innovation. And we would love to support the Indian startup ecosystem in its development. And of course, the third major activity are the training manuals and the materials that we have developed together with NABARD and BIRD, and which are hosted here with BIRD. So we have done a couple of things. Looking to the future, we would love to expand and continue this and maybe train and work together with large FIs so that they also be better prepared for the green transition that is coming. Before I end, I would like to zoom out a bit, something different. I think the competencies that India has, that NABARD has, that BIRD has, that you as a finance organization have in finance, in climate finance, could be interesting for other countries. And for the last couple of years, 2 years, we've been pushing a project on triangular cooperation, where basically with the Ministry of External Affairs, um, we are helping and promoting the cooperation of Indian ministries and institutions with third countries in Africa, in Asia. And I know that NABARD has been asked by African countries to help them in setting up rural development banks and to transfer this knowledge. And this triangular cooperation is a very easy mechanism where eye to eye partners are brought together and can share their experiences and yeah, learn from each other and maybe develop their own new projects. So I'd just like to, in this Zoom out, mention that, and thank you very much for your patience and for the trust that you place in GIZ. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. I would now invite Mrs. Rajeshri Ray, Economic Advisor to Minister of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, Government of India. Ma'am Ray is presently looking after issues relating to blue economy, climate and sustainable finance at the ministry. With more than 25 years experience in the sector, she has been representing India on the UNFCCC, has also G20 working groups. Ma'am, I would now request you to present the uh, special address. Thank you.
Thank you very much, respected Chairman, NABARD, Additional Chief Secretary, Government of Uttar Pradesh, Director, BIRD, distinguished dignitaries, and my dear participants. Very good morning to all of you. And first of all, let me thank the organizers, especially Director Bird, for this opportunity to speak in this roundtable on taking climate finance forward, need for institutional solutions. I also congratulate Bird for a 5-year successful journey of the Climate Change Center. And as far as NABARD and also with BIRD, as far as Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change is concerned, there has been a very strong association through the Green Climate Fund, Multilateral Adaptation Fund, and National Adaptation Fund for Climate Change that I would come on these points later. So, have been asked to specifically speak on institutional arrangements and policies for mobilizing climate finance. So when I start the institutional arrangements and then thereafter the policies for raising, mobilizing climate finance. So first we need, and I'm sure this audience definitely understands what exactly are the challenges, what exactly are the vulnerabilities. We do have various scientific reports about India specific studies also, especially with regard to the vulnerabilities and of course challenges. So what we need to do, that is something which we need to recognize. At the same time, what we have done so far, that is something which need to assess and take it forward. So if we look at last more than 2 decades, perhaps 3 decades, we have seen, as far as the Indian economy is concerned, that there are a number of structural reforms and governance reforms that has taken place, which focused on ease of living, ease of doing business, increasing the agricultural productivity, and of course building the trust, uh, then of cooperation of the private sector in achievement of the objectives. So those structural and governance reforms have taken place, and there is a kind of recognition and discourse both at the domestic as well as at the international level that now it is India's moment. Of course, we do kind of take pride when we hear about that term. It is India's moment, and when we talk about India's moment, apart from various other economic parameters, it is something which is very important is the sustainable development, conservation, and also the economic growth, which needs to go hand in hand. So, as we heard in the welcome remarks, everything entails some cost. So that kind of transition which we are talking, the transition is what? A low carbon development vision along with a climate resilient development path. So that transition definitely entails a huge amount of cost for an economy like India, which is as a big economy. It it entails cost. So then the macroeconomic picture comes into place. So we need to have kind of a inclusive and sustainable macroeconomic management, which needs to take into account. At the same time, as we know that there are vulnerabilities because of the climate change, so it should not those those policies should not be kind of inflicting further socioeconomic harm, especially on the vulnerable groups. So that is about the macroeconomic policy. Then there is a important player, that is the financial system. And we have heard in the welcome remarks about the cost of capital, and also there are two things which we need to when we talk about the financial system. One is that, of course, the topic given to me, that bring policies kind of for raising green finance. So increase green finance, and at the same time manage that climate related risk that also kind of impact the financials. So one is the mobilization of green finance, other is kind of managing the climate finance. And now we look at the sources of finance, which are the, of course, in an academic or theoretical framework, we can say that this could be the sources of finance, like in the climate finance discourse, especially at the international level. we hear about a lot about international public finance. At least the discussion takes place, whether the actual flows that we can debate later, but the international public finance, international private finance, domestic public finance, domestic private finance, and blended finance. There's a lot of discussion which has been happening as far as the sources of finance is concerned. But having heard about the sources of finance, when we look at India, how in India's climate actions have been largely financed, it is through the domestic public resources. So that is the reality, though we do have the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, its various instruments like Paris Agreement and all. However, 30 years of negotiations, however, it is still largely financed through the domestic public finance. So when we say that it is the domestic resources which we have been spending for our climate actions, then what are the kind of policy enablers which we have at the domestic level? So we do have the National Environment Policy, which focuses on sustainable development within the constraints imposed by the ecology as well as the imperatives of this of the social justice. But the sharper focus on climate actions, if we look at it, it started with it started with the National Action Plans on Climate Change, which was launched in 2008 with various focused missions and all. Now we are kind of adding to those focused missions like earlier the solar energy efficiency. Of course, agriculture is a very important mission under the National Action Plan on Climate Change, National Mission for Sustainable Agriculture. Now we have recently added the health mission and all. So a large focus on adaptation is there in that thing. So after the National Action Plan, the national framework, then we focused on the state action plans on climate change, because there are diversities as far as the states are concerned. The states' priorities are different. So depending on those state priorities, then state action plans also have been put in place. Of course, those were revised after the Paris Agreement and taking into the nationally determined contributions which are in place. And these are that federal structure is here very important, because many of the climate sensitive sectors like agriculture, water, and all, where a lot of mandate is with the state governments, and we focused on the decentralized decision making. And recently there is a lot happening, especially from the state governments, the representative from state governments here, and from the NABARD also. There is a lot of localized, very effective climate actions are taking place. Perhaps that is not very much documented in the public space. So that is also taken, and those are very effective. At the same time, the other important players are civil society organizations, private sector NGOs, and research organizations. That they do play a very, very important role with their inputs, which helps in the decision making. But overall, when it comes to institutional arrangements, especially for the implementation of the NDCs, there is the Apex Committee for Implementation of Paris Agreement that is in place, which gives an effective coordinated response for the implementation across ministries and departments. So that is about the institutional arrangements. Now the policies for green finance. Largely, what we are trying to do in a maybe at an increasing pace at this point in time is that we are trying to mainstream those into various policy decisions. And if we look at uh, the one of the most important instrument here is the union budget. If we look at the recent union budgets, so that is a very prominent focus on sustainability and green finance and energy transition, climate actions and all. So if we look at the union budget presented on 1st of February 2022, it talked about thematic funds, it talked about energy transition, clean energy transition, and climate actions. And if we look at the recent one, that has a very big focus on green economy. So one among the 7 priorities is that in the union budget, the recent one is the green economy. And if I just try to kind of explain how this has emerged and has come into the mainstream from the margins. 10 years back, if we had talked about green growth or green economy, that was not an accepted kind of term those days, 10 years back. We have spent hours and hours of negotiations in the international fora, kind of stating that how green growth or green economy, the way it is being discussed at that point in time, is not acceptable to a developing country like India. But now, if you look at our union budget, the last union budget has or green growth. The word green has been used at least 23 times in that union budget. So you can see the kind of acceptability or that change which has happened in terms of the policy space as far as green finance is concerned. So we do have various measures in the union budget which talks about green energy, green farming, green mobility, green building, and so on and so on. So now that banking institutions, now it is kind of being mainstream, then banking institutions is an important role here, not only for raising green funds, but also how we address the issue of the cost of capital, how it is kind of affordable at the same time at scale, affordable financing at a scale, how we can keep that. That's a very big important challenge. At the same time, in the lending policies and all, how do you verify the sustainability issues in the banking system, and how do we measure it, kind of things, because whatever we measure, that only can be addressed. So what gets measured only can be addressed. So that's also very important. At the same time, of course, perhaps these are the largely the bankers are here, but I just want to touch upon a second about the insurance industry also, that provides a kind of, that offers a reliable protection. But when we look at the kind of insurance penetration in Indian economy, it is kind of very less compared to the global average and all. But then there is a positive development, encouraging development, that insurance penetration in insurance density has been rising much faster in India, if we take the data for the last 15 years. So we are talking about a low carbon development vision, low carbon development growth, at the same time a climate resilient development path. So it's very important that, especially from the bankers' perspective, how do you do that kind of that stress test? How do we adopt climate related scenario analysis or the stress test? And of course, all the banking system is very much now clear about what the kind of physical risk, the kind of transition risk which we have as far as the Indian economy is concerned. Given the vulnerabilities, the physical risk, the kind of policies for a low carbon development pathway, then comes the transition risk. So how do we integrate those things? At the same time, when we talk about low carbon future or low carbon development path, it is very important that we should not discount the importance of adaptation. Of course, we do talk about a lot about race to net zero. We do have a net zero target by 2070, so we do talk about it. But at the same time, it's very important that we do talk about the race to resilience also. So both needs to be talked together. And as I indicated, that there is a lot of discussion about the climate finance in an international context, especially in the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, its Paris Agreement and all. There are specific articles on finance dedicated to it in the Paris Agreement. Article 9 speaks about exclusively on climate finance and all. However, there has been like any multilateral negotiations and all, the point is that it's the reality is that it is yet to kind of we don't have a climate kind of multilaterally agreed definition and also what counts as climate finance all is still a matter of discussions and all. So what Paris Agreement trying to address is that how to bring the transparency as far as climate finance accounting is concerned. So that while that conversation goes on, it's very important that domestically we do whatever we can do as far as low carbon development actions as well as adaptation actions are concerned. And of course, when we talk about climate finance, especially in the international context, we do have some funds which are set up under the multilateral financial mechanism, like the Green Climate Fund. In fact, NABARD is the first national implementing entity across the world who got an accredited status under the Green Climate Fund. And of course, there is a multilateral adaptation fund. Again, NABARD is an accredited entity under the multilateral adaptation fund. So these two funds, NABARD has a very, very important role. And we do have a number of projects with NABARD under the Green Climate Fund, especially adaptation projects and all, which is now ongoing. And NABARD also had a kind of great contribution while implementing the National Adaptation Fund for Climate Change. So we do have a very strong association with NABARD as far as the climate finance space is concerned. And we definitely going forward, we will further strengthen that work from the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change with NABARD. Now, as we know that there are physical risk and transition risk, and when it comes to the vulnerabilities and all, there could be kind of disruptions in the supply sides, and that has again a lot of implications for the macroeconomic policy management, especially with regard to the growth and containing inflation. So now my last point is about the arrangements about the ESG. So that is something, it's a big, very important hot topic being discussed. So though we are yet to kind of formally publish a taxonomy on sustainable finance, but a lot of work has been done on that, and we have a lot of knowledge as far as ESG is concerned, though we are yet to come out with that and all. And it is no wonder that realizing the importance of it, that various Indian companies have tried to incorporate those ESG initiatives into it, so that is being considered as a very effective instruments when we going forward. And there are various studies, especially one study from the CDP, that is Carbon Disclosure Project, which indicates that the ESG funds have outperformed the conventional funds. But the point to be noted here is that the size of the fund itself is very small. So these are important positive developments which are kind of being which are being taking place. And so the focus on ESG would be critical for us, also for various companies, and increasingly committing to the sustainability goals. So that is also very important. So in some, yes, it is a multi-pronged action plan. It should have the kind of monitorable implementation strategy. So what we are trying to say is that a low carbon development vision, low carbon development strategy. Of course, we do have a that long-term strategy of net zero by 2070. At the same time, there is a vision for a climate resilient development pathway. So an inclusive, sustainable macroeconomic policy with a strong financial system, taking into account the principles of sustainability, that is that is something which deliver for us the long term low carbon strategy with a climate resilient development path. Thank you very much. Mm.
Thank you, madam, for your valuable inputs. I would now invite our guest of honor, Shri Manoj Singh, Additional Chief Secretary, Department of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, Government of Uttar Pradesh. He is a 1989 batch IAS officer with more than 33 years of experience in policy formulation, implementation, and monitoring of various centrally and state government sponsored schemes. So, once again, a warm welcome, sir.
Honorable Saji KV, Chairman NABARD, He is the topmost guy in NABARD. Welcome to Lucknow. Congratulations. Nirupam Mehta ji, Director Board. Rajsri Ray, Economic Advisor, Government of India in Forest, Environment and Climate Change Department. Muhammad Al Khawad, who is a great partner of our department in UP. Ashish Tiwari, a gentleman from Forest Service who has taken a cudgels on behalf of the whole department for heralding a movement for climate change mitigation. An August gathering over here, esteemed bankers and all of other colleagues from banking fraternity. Recently, I saw a movie, Oppenheimer, and I must espouse that all of you should see that movie. The scientist, while heralding and ushering power of an atom, when he made atom bomb, he quoted from Hindu theological text that now I become God of death. Ladies and gentlemen, every one of us who are here, everyone in this planet are becoming God of death by heralding, cascading, and giving fillip to climate change. It's an unstoppable process. If we don't act now, we will lose the planet Earth. I always say that the three sister planet, Earth, Mars, and Venus, are good, bad, and ugly. Earth is a good planet. Mars is a bad planet. And Venus is an ugly planet. Venus has surface temperature of 450 degrees centigrade, rainfall of sulfuric acid, and a pressure which is equivalent to deep inside the ocean. Did you know how it got there? It is runaway greenhouse effect. In fact, there are scientists who are saying that 6 degrees or 9 degrees may be the threshold temperature. After that, the runaway greenhouse effect starts on Earth. The permafrost will be all, the frozen will be melting. The methane inside it will come up. The gas hydrate itself will start releasing methane. And as you know, methane is 250 times more dangerous than carbon dioxide. And we will lose this beautiful planet. The Mother Earth is looking at us with rancor and disdain. We have to act. And for that, we in our Forest, Climate Change and Environment Department in UP, in 2021, we hosted a climate change summit. And there we called people from all sectors of the society, all stakeholders, all collaborators. And we thought how to first of all disseminate the awareness about climate change. And there, Ashish Tiwari made a very good teaser. And I will talk to about this teaser. It was a cartoon with a clear-cut message. And the message is to address to environmental ethics. Because environmental ethics is the most permanent thing which can make change now. So the teaser was like this, that a man dies and he goes to Chitragupt, who is the record keeper of your life. And he goes over there and Chitragupt comes with a data, his whole record. And there Chitragupt has given 70 marks. And if you exceed that 70 marks, you go to heaven. Or you go below 70, you go to hell. This man was a pious man, truthful man, who never did any sin. and his report card was below 70. He was perturbed. He was flabbergasted. Why so? Then Chitragupta says that you have not scored any marks out of 30 marks which we have earmarked for environmental ethics. You have not planted a tree. You have polluted the earth whole life. You have destroyed the environment and thereby you lose 30 marks. Ladies and gentlemen, the village pradhans got this message immediately. And this is how we should start. There is a marks over there for environmental ethics. And if you compute your carbon footprint, you have to plant 302 trees. Every Indian has to plant 302 trees so that whatever carbon footprint in your life you have impacted on this earth can be mitigated. Similarly, if we go for a solar plant, all of us have a house. If we go for a 8 kilowatt solar plant, it is equivalent to 3,600 trees. It makes your whole family a carbon neutral family. Whatever you have taken from this earth in form of oxygen and whatever impacted this earth in form of carbon, you can mitigate that. So the actions start at your own level, at the level of self. What we have done till now in climate change department in UP. First of all, thanks to GIZ, they provided us resource to delve into the various nuances of our programs and policies. And we made a very robust document which is called SAP-CC. It's a document which itemizes all sector of, in fact, UP, all department. And when we were making this plan, we talked to each and every line department of the state government. We called principal secretaries and ACS of the department and we discussed, we deliberated. And then we found out that in next 5 years, 80% of the finance is percolating from the schemes itself. If we go and dive into our schemes, finance is available, only 20% is needed. We have to tweak, we have to fine tune these schemes so that it can become climate friendly. The next thing we did was to host a national conclave, and where we got an insight. We had session, we involved youths, youth parliament was hosted, and there was so much excitement among the youths. We also called the scientist, technologist, and there was a roadmap for green hydrogen. I think nowhere this roadmap exists, but it exists in our department. Green hydrogen is something which can save us from climate change, and we should act. So, what has to be done now? So, in SAP-CC, the program that we made, we have decarbonized our transport sector. We have a clear-cut roadmap how to do it in urban areas through EVs, in rural areas through CNG gas in the intermediate time and later on EVs. We have to decarbonize our energy. The daytime energy, the daytime requirement can be offloaded to solar. And here the NABARD should take leadings. You have to finance solar panels in rural areas. We need huge finance in solar pump sets to delink them from thermal electricity. We need huge finance for EVs. In fact, when we were talking to some of the villagers, we got an insight that if electric vehicle cost comes below 5 lakhs, and India, you know, has plenty of rooftops in villages, everyone will install solar and charge his EV, and immediately a revolution will come. I will request NABARD to keep into this. It's a double benefit. It makes sense. One of my friends in Kanpur, he has installed solar and he charges his car through solar. He moves, his movement is almost green. He moves as a green mobility, what we are envisaging. So, solar pumps and solar rooftop is something which can make our villages climate neutral villages. And we have also already taken a cudgels and heralded a scheme to make our 13 climate neutral village. In fact, if we install megawatt, half a megawatt in each village, the whole India village, two-thirds of India will become carbon neutral. It's very easy to do. Only thing is the acumen and the sharpness of the bankers should be focused towards this. How to galvanize it, how to finance it, and that's how we can do. We have immense scope again in urban areas in form of our car financing. The financing in green and electronic vehicles should increase. Our Prime Minister has signed a net zero program 2070, and he have ushered a mantra of Panchamrit, in which we have to sequester 2.5 billion tons of carbon by 2030. And we are doing in forest department. This time we had a very good rainfall, though the forecast was otherwise. We had a very good rainfall and we catched the rain for forestation. And yesterday only, Prime Minister, Honorable Prime Minister in his Man Ki Baat has talked about plantation of 30 crores trees in UP, which we this time did with people's participation. And there was lots of enthusiasm and zeal all over UP. So we have made our targets in forest department, which is attuned with sequestering our targets of carbon sequestration. So similarly, everyone should make those kind of targets. Financing, Rajshri Ray talked about financing aspect, and all of you are abreast with sharp perspicacity and acumen with regards to how the finance work. I don't have to talk about it, but we have to have both equity and debt instruments. There only it will flow. Regarding climate resilience enhancing, we have a disaster management program, we have a disaster management department, but resilience should be again if NABARD prepares a plan. And I remember when I joined this service as a CDO, we were always looking towards NABARD when the potential link plan, annual potential link plan will come up. We were so much enthusiastic about it because that gave the direction and insight to us where the finance should percolate, where the district plan should be prepared, how the credit plan is to be prepared. They have done a yeoman service. Bird has done a yeoman service in providing these information at district level. They have aided district planning. And as the speaker was saying, that Kishan iCards, right? Oh, Kishan iCards were prepared by because the innovation came over here. So this type of micro innovations has to be mainstreamed. And for flood control, two-thirds of the water of UP has to be captured. It grows in the sea, becomes saline. We have immense potential in Bundelkhand, where we can finance water conservation structures. We can hold those water. And regarding agriculture, sustainable agriculture is something which is seeing its root in UP. Parali burning was one of the most crucial issue, burning of straws, which exacerbated our air pollution. And now I am happy that finance is coming and people are installing biogas and bio-CNG plants. They are taking care of agri residues. Agri residues is going to make ethanol. 2G ethanol. And these are the things, these are the look forward roadmaps where we have to go. I am very happy that a paper, a cursory perusal of your booklet shows lots of new innovations all across the world. In agroclimatically zones, what is the role of data management and AI? And NABARD has cherry picked these beautiful, impactable initiatives all over the world. And I will not like to name them, but in agroecological side, data management side, and these should be translated into the local languages. And Bird should train those innovations info to and disseminate those information to our village level pradhans. So what I expect from the August gathering over here? Introspect. Make your job a climate friendly job. Introspect your life. Take initiative to reduce carbon footprint. You all can do immense by little bit of tweaking. You stop the finance towards the industries which are emission side industries and percolate the finance towards green technologies, clean technologies. Things will happen. There are plenty of goods in the society which can be tweaked by reducing the supply, but changing the technology on the supply side. It happened. We had IC bulbs. Now LED bulbs are being manufactured. So in the market, only LED bulbs are there. If we only manufacture EV, the market will be there, EVs will be there only. If only we supply green hydrogen. And gentlemen, there are two sectors. One is hard to abate sector and one is soft to abate. We should look into soft to abate. Hard to abate is like our thermal production. We have to cope with our targets of economic growth also, or our steel production. But soft to abate like ammonia production or fertilizer production or transport, these are soft to abate sector where we can easily, with little bit of tweaking, we can see the change coming. So before I end my speech, again, you all finance to a large businesses also. And whenever a large businessman or a medium and small businessman comes, talk to them about what is your roadmap for net zero. In fact, ITC is a company which is carbon negative company. Tata Motors has said 2040 as a net zero. If every businessman makes a net zero plan, the task of the government becomes very easy. They will themselves coax and cajole their staff to adopt to change, their CEOs to adopt to change, and they will come to you to borrow money for that. And that's how we can see a change in coming years. Let's join hand and show the result to the world that India can do, can achieve the target which has been promised by our Honorable Prime Minister in Panchamrit. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for your thought-provoking inputs. And I think obviously it is making all of us think on this particular occasion. I would now request our chief guest, Shri Shaji KV, Chairman, National Bank for Agriculture and Rural Development, to present the keynote address at the roundtable. Shri Shaji KV has been working across both commercial banks and RRBs, and has been associated with a number of innovations in retail banking, SME banking, and corporate banking. Has also digitalization of rural financial institutions. So, I welcome you once again.
So good morning to all of you. Respected guest of honor, Sri Manoj Sinhaji, uh, special address who has been delivered by Srimati Rajastri Ray, who is authority in this matter, which we are discussing today, and also the representative of JZ, Mohammed Kawat, and other dignitaries on and off the dais, bankers. Uh, Manoj Sinhaji talked about Oppenheimer. I was not that fortunate to see that film. I tried whenever I got time, but then the tickets were full. From the God of Death, which Oppenheimer was ringing in through that atomic bomb explosion, when he quoted Indian civilization. Because Indian civilization believes in birth and rebirth. Of course, this is what the cycle, which that sustainability is what Indian civilization is about. And then I tried, of course, the other film, which is Barbie, where from the ideal world to the real world, if they transit, whether they will be able to sustain. That was what the other film, the Barbie, uh, tries to explore. And then they find that then the real world, it is very difficult to live. Then, of course, the third film, which is now competing with these two, is the Mission Impossible. So, whether the climate change is a mission which is impossible. So, that is the question which we need to answer. All these three are high grossers, of course. It's of course grossing towards the private enterprises. Of course, the private sector, unless it chips in to the greater task, then I don't think the public sector's initiatives will be taken to fruition. Uh, the another development which happened now is the export ban. Of course, it's you all know the export ban of rice by India, which is almost 40% of the total exports is by India. It is because of the climate change which is affected the El Nino and such other things. But then it is affecting affecting the third world countries most, because India is exporting to mostly neighboring countries and also to Africa, where the rice is the staple food. So the climate change which happened in India resulted in Indian rice production to come down, and as a consequence, the export got banned, and as a result, who is suffering? The poor. So that exactly is what no the role of India in tackling climate change. If India can tackle climate change, I think almost half of the work is done. But then India has to do it in a very orderly manner, and Indian needs of development, because India at this point of time is trying to grow fast. Rather, it is now trying to take the global standard stage of growth. And for growth, we need a lot of energy, and energy, of course, it should be a sustainable energy, which is what we are thinking about. And we are at the right time where no, we can recalibrate our growth strategies to suit the global needs. Now, within India, being a development financial institution, NABARD has a clear role to play, because agriculture and rural sector are the major emitters, as well as the you know the at the receiving end of climate change activities. In that context, as a development financial institution, world over, when we talk about growth or strategies for growth, they need capital, they need funds. But then, as a development financial institution, these funds need to be deployed in a profitable manner. But then we are in the process of uh, you know mitigating the risks with a proper way to recover the cost for deploying that loan or the capital. So we are in the process of balancing these two. Uh, as a commercial entity, any bank will operate in an environment where risks are lesser and cost recovery will be higher. So that risk adjusted rate of return will be appropriate. Whereas for a development financial institution, which is trying to wean away the dependency of people from the government or from the vulnerable areas to a sustainable area where the private sector institutions can function. So the climate action also needs a lot of, first of all, a lot of innovative steps, and we need to translate that innovative steps into a sustainable model, which will work in a private world where the cost recovery as well as risks are cost recovery is maximized and risks are minimized. Now, as NABARD, we have been taking a lot of steps. Of course, today, we marked the fifth anniversary of the Climate Change Center here, and a lot of initiatives have been taken. And we are, as Rajashri Ray pointed out, we were participating globally also in terms of national implementing authority entities for various climate funds. But we need to do a lot more. We are aware of that, and then what we need to now try to do is that we have to now be a advocate for shifting the development strategies to a low carbon climate resilient economic model. That is what we are trying to do. Doshi ji was telling about Manoj Singh ji is telling about the clean energy and the solar panels and EVs. We, in fact, from the Green Climate Fund, has spearheaded some activity through Tata Trust for installing solar panels in rural areas from the Green Climate Fund. Of course, in EVs also, we had taken some steps, but then there was some confusion at the policy level where whether EV is a mandate of NABARD or not. That was one confusion at the policy level, at the Government of India level. Also, it was there. But now that Manoj Singh ji has clearly told the solar panel EVs how it can complement each other for a cleaner growth. In fact, no solar panels, more solar panels and more EVs will make huge investments in power generation not needed, because no actually the concentrated investments in power generation like coal based ones or hydroelectric power projects, the need for investing such not so good climate related ones, that those investments will be made infructuous. So we need to decentralize power generation, and we need to back up that with a lot of newer technologies in use of cleaner energy. So some policy direction also we got in from whatever he has told now. We in fact within NABARD we were very clear that we need to go forward in a larger way in EVs, which we'll be doing it going forward. Now, Sinaji also told about, sorry, Manoj, every time, because there was another Manoj in our board, so everywhere I got confusion. Uh, so he was telling about this rainfall and forecast, which was otherwise. Forecast was that no rainfall will be lesser, but then actually it turned out to be larger, or rather normal forecast of normal rainfall happened. This points towards the need for more data analytics for climate finance, or rather any climate activity. So we were lacking on that. In fact, a lot of data is getting generated by various agencies, and then those data can be collated, and some analytics can work on that and come out with very verifiable and believable models for forecasting. And so that uh, proper mitigating efforts or adaptation efforts can be taken based on the forecast. If the forecast can be of or the reliable forecast can be of say 1 year or even 2 years, if you can do that, but then I know that this may not be that much, accuracy may not be there, but still near 60%, 70% accuracy, if we are able to forecast, then a lot of mitigation efforts also can be taken in advance, so that the effect of these changes can be lessened. There, the artificial intelligence, data analytics, and all are climate-friendly approaches we need to take. NABARD is in the forefront now. We have identified this as our priority area, and we are in the process of setting up a data warehouse. And that data warehouse is not exactly meant for NABARD activities, but meant for the sector, that rural sector and the climate sector. We are structuring our data warehouse. We have got the advantage of starting late, so that no, the technology has matured to a certain level. So we can ingest those technologies in a more efficient manner. And maybe in 3 years time, 3 months time from now, we will be coming out with the forecasts which are of importance to the sector. Climate thing, yes, we were giving a lot of importance to this area, as evidenced by the 5 year climate center history which we have before us. But now we are giving more focus. We will be giving more focused attention to this sector. We are in the process of setting up a dedicated climate and sustainability vertical with undivided attention from a CGM, and also we will be reporting to board on these activities. And we have got a 5 year action plan for such activities as well. So we have termed internally as Pragati, which we incrementally we'll be making a lot of changes in our actions, so that we can evolve as a better organization. And then we are also engaging a lot of external consultants, because we know that internal expertise may not be sufficient enough to go forward. We need to understand the international best practices, and also the best practices within the country, so that we can deliver in a very efficient manner. So the urgency of addressing climate change need not be re-emphasized, because now that we are facing the problem, we were talking about that last year, or even 2 years back, that it is a distinct possibility, but now it has become a reality. So we need to evolve faster. And regulator also has identified the urgency. They have come out with a document which recognizes climate change as a key risk that can threaten the soundness of the financial entities in India. And it has identified two broad channels of climate risk, which is the physical risk and the transition risk that impact financial sector. So the physical risk is for real, that the climate change will affect the existence of these institutions, and also the securities which they take while. So commercial entities believe take a lot of collateral securities, and they which are prone to adversities because of the climate actions. And also the transition risk in this in the way that a lot of investments need to be there for that. And all these things will translate to funds, the need for the funds. As a developmental financial institution, we are depending on the public funding in terms of government uh, giving us capital for all these such activities. Of course, government has given a lot of such capital, because we are a capital intensive organization. We work in an area which needs a lot of capital, patient capital, with a longer investment horizon, and we can't look at immediate returns. But then those returns, the double bottom line approach which we need to take, not only the financial return, but the impact it creates in the area in which we operate, and so that the other institutions, their stability is improved because of our actions. That is the double bottom line. Because we have to take care of our own sustainability, as also the sustainability of the other institutions working with us in the private sector area, so that the total effect for the sector will be maximized. Also, in the recent report of RBI on currency and finance, uh, there was a theme of towards a greener India, which covers four major dimensions. So RBI is very proactive in recognizing those aspects and giving directions to the sector. The four dimensions are the unprecedented scale and pace of climate change, this which we need to factor in while we plan for suitable actions. Its macroeconomic effects and its implications for financial stability, and the policy options for mitigating climate risk. There are various estimates of the requirements for financing such activities. They say that almost 2 to 3% of the India's GDP is needed till next no, maybe next 6 to 7 years, till 2030, where it's a very important milestone for our commitment towards climate action. I need not re-emphasize on India's role globally on the climate thing, because we are all know our Honorable Prime Minister is taking a lot of lead and he has proactively given commitment to the world. Because India, unless India moves ahead in that direction, a lot of other countries, third world countries who are dependent on India's actions, they can't be, they will be severely affected. In fact, to the extent that there will be problems, social strife, and also there will be existential crisis also to these countries. Uh, it all boils down to need for innovative. We all tell that no, we need innovative changes to be happening. But then what is exactly is that innovation? Of course, it is constantly changing. The innovation now may not be the appropriate one. Maybe in the next second or next day. So we need to constantly be agile to the changing circumstances. Uh, but whether private capital is adequate enough, or whether the government and the private put together can commit adequate funding for this, that depends on the type of projects or type of policies which are putting forth. As I said earlier, as we go to those areas which are not sure about giving adequate returns, private sector may be little be wary of investing in there. So the role of a development finance, as a role of development finance institution, NABARD need to now put up adequate projects and appropriate projects rather, so that no, and we have to do it as a pilot or something, and show to the world or show to the investors that such projects are sustainable. In this context, no, we have been pioneering a lot of such innovative things. So SHG Bank Linkage Program, FPOs, these were all innovative things at that point of time, where we tried for collectivization of people who are unable to access adequate finance. But here also, a differentiated approach need to be there. We understand the challenges of India in terms of climate is not the same which is faced elsewhere, because India needs to have its own solutions, because Indian problems are quite different from the world's issues. World over, when we go for development, there will be consolidation of activities happening. Whereas in India's case, because of the huge population, there is fragmentation. The fragmentation is there. That means a lot of coordinating efforts need to be taken, because a lot of players, in terms of consolidation, it will be easy to convince a set of people. Whereas in the case of our country, a lot of coordination efforts need to be taken, and every person may not work in understand the risk he of the actions he is taking on the larger society, and then in his own personal interest he may take steps which are detrimental. So we need to be wary of that. We need to have a differential solution for the country as a whole. uh, in this context, no, NABARD has set up a climate change fund by its own uh, in 2016-17. It was with a small corpus. Now, last year, RBI was kind enough to augment that fund with the interest rate differential, which we generate out of priority sector lending shortfall funds. So now the corpus is close to around 70 crores, which will be augmented further as we go forward. To that extent, we have demonstrated our intent to support climate change activities. And also, we are collaborating with various institutions. GIZ, for an example, we are collaborating with GIZ for the climate adaptation and finance in rural India, the CAFRI. The aim is to strengthen capacity of NABARD to mobilize climate finance for adaptation and implementation, and also it needs to be a gender responsive climate adaptation related measures. So these activities for these various tools and knowledge products are being evolved specific to Indian needs. We are also discussing with ADB for collaboration. The EV collaboration was one which I mentioned earlier. The discussions now I understand that SIDBI has taken that matter forward. Initially, ADB was discussing with us for the electric vehicles, and but then the solar aspects of financing. These things now we are discussing with ADB. And the scope includes identification and processing support of pipeline projects, institutional capacity, knowledge enhancement, and creation and pilot testing of climate change adaptation financing programs. So these things, the individual banks, they may be developing certain products, but then we need to develop capacity within the financial institutions and also within the players, various players. So we have a dual role to play in that. We need to help the banks in structuring appropriate products for climate resilient economic development. Uh, in that context, no, we all through these years we were into watershed programs and tribal development programs, which are essentially, in the new terminology of climate finance, we can say that carbon sequestration projects. Actually, we were trying to reforest rather these areas, and also to tap the local resources. Now, this agroecology based approaches also we are spearheading. Uh, the watershed programs, close to around 1,000 such projects were there, and another 1,000 tribal development projects were there. These are all in the new terminology we can say as carbon sequestration projects, and then we have around 2.6 million hectares have been benefited out of this watershed program, and another million under tribal development programs. Now, uh, under our refinance also, we need to structure our refinance to sensitize banks to target the flow towards greener activities. So we will be tweaking our policy, and we will be also helping them in assisting them with subsidized funds for such activities. In fact, we tried to issue a green bond, thing, because we have to now mobilize private sector participation in such activities as well. But we find our experience is that we don't get much benefits comparing the documentation needs of issuing such bonds. We find that around 5 bips. If you see that, no, normally when we issue a bond and to the and versus a green bond which we are issuing, around 5 bips difference only. It's not worth the efforts which we are taking. But nevertheless, the ecosystem of investors is getting widened. Some new types of investors are coming in. So that is one benefit of issuing green bonds. So we will be exploring those sources of funds also in a very targeted manner. Uh, what I need to tell now is that, no, our reaffirm our commitment as a premier development financial institution, and we will be in the forefront in directing the policies, and also helping the players to 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 formulate appropriate policies for the larger goal of uh, sustainable growth. Uh, as I said, the triangular cooperation which Manoj Singh ji has told, uh, I think, rather, no, a GSED representative has told, I feel that, no, that cooperation need to be augmented, because here it is not the money from outside which we are looking at. We are looking at appropriate technology, because domestic sources, now that the US yields have gone up and it's almost equivalent to the yields in India, we can't look for cheaper funds from abroad. But then we can definitely look for technology, because these countries can offer a lot of newer technologies. But then we need to customize that technology to Indian needs as well. That will be the job of the various players within the country. Um, as I said, no, I know I was hearing Manoj Singh ji talking about the district planning exercise. Yes, we are now trying to reinvent that planning exercise to suit the evolving needs as well. Already, you are aware that the cooperatives are gaining importance here. We are in the process of helping uh, almost a lack of cooperative societies, primary societies, to go to the computerized environment. In fact, UP is now leading in that process as well. UP always has been responsive of late in terms of whatever steps we are taking. I understand the system integrator and the other ecosystem development has already happened. Yesterday, I was reviewing with the UP CGM over here. So it was UP is a large state, 1/6 of the and if UP moves, India can move. And I'm happy that, no, UP is now taking lead in that as well. So once cooperatives are in the digitized environment, the sustainable growth of the rural economy will be focused through cooperatives. That is the objective of Government of India as well. Whenever I meet your Honorable Union Corporation Minister, he used to tell about what new activities we can entrust the cooperatives with. And he's not envisaging cooperatives as a lending institution merely. He's envisaging cooperatives as a major player in the value chain in the rural areas, and in that context, no, cooperatives are getting transformed into multi-purpose societies. So here also we have a climate change angle there, because cooperatives close to 3 crore members are there across, which which is a huge population, and that too at the bottom of the pyramid. So if we can enlist the support of cooperatives on this, we will be working on that, and whatever growth plans we have for cooperatives will have a climate resilient angle also on this. So the district credit plan will focus on cooperative based development, and also will be focusing on resilient climate aspects of development as well. So there also district specific actions also we can look at. So we will be reinventing the district planning exercise, incorporating these two recent developments. I stop by saying that no, by rededicating NABARD to the cause of climate resilient growth, I'm sure that no, as India grows, and that too India has to grow very fast, and it has to show the way to the world that climate resilient, low carbon growth is possible. Thank you. Sorry, I missed.
Thank you very much, sir, for your valuable insights,
Quite often I refer.
which I am sure that will help us take us the climate finance agenda forward. I now request our director, Sri Nirupam Mehrotra, kindly present our distinguished guest with a token of appreciation on behalf of BIRD. Memento for Sri Chaji KV, sir, Chairman NABARD. The memento for Sri Manoj Singh ji, Additional Chief Secretary, Government of Uttar Pradesh. Uh, to Mrs. Rajeshri Ray, Economic Advisor. And sir, and Mr. Mohammed Al Khawat. Sir, these mementos are GI products that have been produced by Sri Vishwakarma Wood Carving Producer Company, which is an off-farm producer company that has been supported by NABARD in Varanasi district of Uttar Pradesh. So in a way, again, we are again trying to promote sustainability, especially at the rural level. Before we move ahead, I would now like to thank all our distinguished guests for their gracious presence and valuable insights during the inaugural session. From that, sir, it is very clearly evident that there is a need to align the ground level financial requirements with a financial architecture that is conducive for climate finance. This inter alia requires mobilization of additional resources from both the public and private sectors, as has been brought out repeatedly, for which again I believe innovative mechanisms need to be designed, probably with modifying certain existing ones to encourage climate investments. So it is against this backdrop we are moving next to our panel discussion on taking climate finance forward, need for innovative solutions. The panel discussion is being chaired by Sri Ashish Tiwari ji, Secretary, Department of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, Government of Uttar Pradesh. With more than 25 years of experience in the sector, Sri Tiwari ji is spearheading the efforts of Government of Uttar Pradesh in developing climate resilience from the grassroots level. The session will be moderated by Sri Dinesh P, Chief General Manager, Climate Change Vertical, NABARD. As was already pointed out, NABARD is the national implementing entity for both the National Adaptation Fund on Climate Change and Adaptation Fund, as also a direct access entity for green climate. Uh, distinguished panel members are Sri Ashok Sharmaji, Chief General Manager, who is presently heading the Project Finance and Structuring Strategic Business Unit at State Bank of India since September 22. Basically, his portfolio involves handling large project finance transactions both on the infrastructure and non-infrastructure side, both from domestic resources and external, that is international. Our second panel member is Sri Amit Sinerji, General Manager attached to the Sustainable Finance Group in the Department of Regulation, Reserve Bank of India, which is guiding all of us in the country, basically focusing on the need to factor in climate related risks in the banking portfolio. Shri Vivek Adyaji, Associate Director in BCG, is one of our panel members. Basically, he is a core member of the Boston Consulting Group's Asia Pacific Climate and Sustainability Practice, and he has got good, I would say, he's an expert in climate change, including abatement levers, their economics, markets and emission regulation, and related strategies for private and public sectors. Our last panel member is Mrs. Bigzna Gill, who anchors the North Zone uh, at Sustain Plus Energy Foundation. She is basically both a project manager and a researcher with expertise in rural energy access and sustainable livelihoods. Now I hand over the session to Sri Dinesh P. For moderating this.
Uh, Chairman Abad and other distinguished guests on the dais, very good morning to all of you. Before I interact with the esteemed panelist, let me just set the context for the discussion. As Mr. Shriram has already told, the objective of this particular session uh, is basically how do you align the supply and demand side of the climate finance, because you know that um, both public and private sector need to have a crucial role in mobilizing the funds for scaling up the financing. But if you need to achieve this, then the financial architecture at the field level also should respond. So how do you match the supply and demand side? So that is something we need to discuss in this particular forum. We have just heard our esteemed speaker speaking in the inaugural session regarding the whole facet of the climate finance. Uh, when you look at Rajashree ma'am in her address has told that the two major streams for supporting the climate finance is one is at international level, public and private sources, and the other one is at domestic side, again public and private. So when you look at these two sources, basically these two are available in two broad categories. One is in the form of a grant, which mainly comes from the government sector, and the other one is a commercial fund loan coming from the institutional finance players and all the private sector. So when you look at the grant sector in Indian context, in Chairman Sir in his address has also spoken about the various funds which are being administered by NABARD in its capacity as National Implementing Agency and the direct access entity. We have seen quite a few number of projects being implemented under these funds. We have sourced the funds from these funds. But then when you look at the quantum of finance which has gone into this project, it's close to around a little over 1800 crores. So when you look at the countries of India's size, this is a very meager amount. And there are various challenges in accessing these funds from the different international organizations. One is they have their own country cap, their own compliance issues, and many of the projects when we post to these funds, they will say that these are all business as usual projects. There is no specific climate angle being addressed. So it's getting tougher to access these funds and get it. So we need to now tap the domestic resources available with our mainstream players, bankers, and the private sector. But then that also have their own challenges. Right? It's not easy to do. Mitigation sector is always able to attract the finance from mainstream players, because that is something which is where the viability, commercial viability, and the financial viability is already established. So mainstream players are quite comfortable in addressing or responding to the requirements of mitigation sector. But the adaptation sector is something where bankability or the viability is always questioned. So banks and mainstream players are a little reluctant to address these things. Here comes the role of innovative solutions to do that. Now, Rajeshri ma'am in her address has also spoken about local solutions. We need to have a local solution to address this. You can't have a sort of countrywide policy to address this issue. Similarly, Manoj Singh sir in his address has also spoken about the state level initiatives. I think all of us are quite happy to learn that a lot of innovative things are happening in the state of UP. So, localized solutions, state-wise policies, innovative solutions. This is what we have to look for to address the huge requirements of the climate finance, which is required. Now, what could be the innovative solutions? There are different options coming in the market. Whether it could be because main finance, if you extend to these projects, then it becomes a little costly for the project holders to do that. So can we do a sort of blended finance where the loan along with some other incentives in the form of equity, grant, insurance, or other risk mitigation measures can be combined and then offered to the project holders? Can we have some kind of an incentive to the project holder in the form of how does his income stream enhanced? Like now we talk about carbon market, carbon credit. So can we add these things in his income stream so that now it becomes a little easy for him to repay? So there is overall cost for mobilizing that funds comes down. Similarly, how do we incentivize bankers to involve more and more for the climate finance? So now Chairman Sir in his address has just spoken about now we need to look beyond a conventional balance sheet. We also need to look for impact which we create in the society. So that is something which all of us take it seriously. I'm sure then we find the reason to be in the climate finance sphere. So these are some of the thoughts. Now today we have esteemed members in the panel chaired by respected Ashish Tiwari ji, who is spearheading the whole environment and related activities in government of Uttar Pradesh. We have also heard some introductory remarks from Manoj Singh ji. Now I think Ashish Tiwari ji will be able to contribute more. I'm just tempted to say that when Manoj Singh ji spoke about the teaser on the Chitragut, so I think it's not just Sarpanch. I think all of us sitting here would also have got shocker like now it's all of us to think in how do you now comply with the 30% which is going to be there in your balance sheet when you so uh, these panelists carry experience ranging from government side. We have regulator speaking on the panel. We have State Bank of India, largest commercial bank in the country. We have experts speaking from Boston Consulting Group, who carry a lot of national as well as international exposure. Then we have Bilsna Gill talking about grassroots level rural initiatives. So all this expertise will help us in finding out some answers for the questions which we would pose. I would first request Ashish Tiwari ji. Sir, we have heard a lot of measures and innovative things which are happening in government of in the state of Uttar Pradesh. If you can just enlighten the audience regarding what kind of measures and institutional mechanism and what kind of approach the government of UP has adopted to address the climate change from a public finance angle on the government side. So,
Thank you, Dinesh ji. I think the climate finance for climate change mitigation and adaptation, if we compare, particularly at sub-regional level, I think on mitigation side, it is really very, very easy as compared to on adaptation side. Like take the example of like one of a agroforestry uh, carbon financing initiative of state of Uttar Pradesh. which leverages carbon financing for income generation of farmers and farmers producers organizations. It's a huge benefit which will be coming to farmers, because under the leadership of Manoj Singh sir, the plantation drive taken up by the government since last 5 or 6 years, that is that has gone mostly into agricultural fields, and the carbon sequestration, which also matches our national targets of creation of additional carbon sinks. I think it was very smart initiative by the government to tag it as tag it with carbon financing. But when it comes to adaptation side, like why I am taking a specific example, like take any intervention, whether it is clean cooking, whether it could be conversion of uh, technological upgradation to reduce air pollution or whatnot. The only thing is we have to keep in mind that the co-benefits, climate co-benefits, have to be calculated. So for mitigation side, it is really very easy to ensure public finance. But on adaptation side, see our state action plan for climate change, which Manoj Singh sir also focused. Like with this challenge, we are the first ones who has really mapped all the government schemes from where the finance, the grant finance can be achieved for adaptation. I'm very happy to put forth before you that whatever planning we have done for next 10 years, 72% grant funds are available. The gap would be around 28% for financing, which has to come from the public financing. Coming to the biggest part of adaptation intervention in the state like Uttar Pradesh is really in the domain of NABARD, which is climate adaptive agriculture. Just 2 3 days back, I was interacting with the Abdul Kalam University's Innovation Hub gathering of innovators and startups. They have really done a wonderful job, but a financing is needed to actually they are completely on climate adaptation side, whether it is providing weather advisories or agri-met advisories, or giving a boost to climate resilient crops by way of value addition in the farmlands, or whether it is a precision irrigation. See, it was a range, I cannot complete the list over here. We were really overwhelmed to interact with them. But the real challenge is how to really meet their financing needs so that their scale of operation actually converts into a viable business proposition. The businesses, I think, the the leveraging of the BRSR framework has now is a silver line for us. Like now, the top 1,000 companies, they will be having a mandatory disclosure, non-financial disclosure from FY 2023. So I think there we can really have a good I'll take an one example of, we have coined a word called private panchayat partnership, wherein, see, if at a state level there is a gap of 28%, we are also doing climate smart village planning, climate smart district level planning, with all kinds of financial resource mapping. So whatever gap is there, we really need to see the innovative financing solutions. One of them is like harnessing the CSR funds for climate adaptation to make, to support, not to make, but to support the village, a climate smart village. Public financing, take example of clean cooking. There may be some clean cooking solutions which which may be subsidized by way of carbon financing, but still they have some cost. So there, I think the public finances has to come and support the microfinancing institutions who can really provide a small loans at a very, you can say, affordable lending costs. So these are some really challenges, but when it comes to uh, adaptation side and providing adaptative resilient solutions, then also the corporates, like they have to go beyond CSR and come out with something like a PPP based PP based financing model, where government would also be having a very important role to play. So with this, like initial thoughts in my mind, I would like to hear from other panelists. Thank you.
Thank you, Tiwari ji. Now, let me move on to our guest from Reserve Bank of India. Reserve Bank, along with its role as a regulator, it's also playing the role of an enabler in this particular segment. Uh, they already have come out with the discussion paper on the climate risk framework, and slowly a lot of initiatives are coming from RBI to basically encourage the mainstream bankers to involve more and more into the climate finance. So if we can request Amit Sinha ji from the Sustainable Finance vertical of Department of Regulation, Reserve Bank of India, um, to address climate related financial risk and in order to promote climate finance, what have been the measures taken by RBI in the recent past?
Yeah, thank you. But if you permit, can I use the dais, please? Yeah, thank you. Okay. Uh, First of all, respected chairman and other dignitaries from Government of India, Government of UP, from State Bank, from NABARD, from BCG and Sustain Plus and other friends. My congratulations to Bird and NABARD for organizing this seminar and the panel discussion, which is very timely. And my thanks to for giving an opportunity to speak. Now, coming to what has been done by RBI, uh, let me just say to put a perspective, let me just say that 5 C's. What are these 5 C's? Contributing to coordination efforts to combat climate change. Of course, as ACS was mentioning, so that we can all have a better environmental ethical score. So that's the target. Reserve Bank is also mindful of the activities and its role in the Indian financial system. To map how the things have actually moved, the journey, let me just take you to the journey started in 2007, long back, when RBI said to banks, issued a guideline on CSR. The secretary just spoke about the CSR, the on CSR, sustainable development, and sustainability reporting. So that was the first major initiative. It was always mindful, but the first major initiative came in December 2007. Thereafter, in 2012, the loans to individuals for renewables were allowed to be added to as part of PSL. PSL is very important for channeling the finance, and this is unique to India. This is unique to India, and it's very important. In 2015, that was the year when Paris Agreement was decided. In 2015, the bank loans up to 15 crores were allowed to be taken as part of the PSL. But it was felt over a period of time that, of course, with the addition to these PSL, the credit flow increased, the credit flow improved. But then what it was observed later, that it was waning. So again in 2020, Reserve Bank increased the amount. So now the amount as it stands today, it's 30 crores. So any loan up to 30 crores will be counted as the PSL for renewables, I'm talking. But the trust has been very recent and it is very new. The trust is really important and it has taken momentum in recent times. 2021, Reserve Bank joined, it took the membership of NGFS. What is NGFS? Network for Greening the Financial System. What is this network? This is basically a network of central banks, supervisors, and international organizations all across the world. Approximately 140 members are there today. They are there to share best practices, to learn from each other, to suggest the best practices, and to mobilize finance for transition. That's the purpose of NGFS. And Reserve Bank, after some time, issued a statement of commitment. It's there in public domain. A commitment was made by way of a press release where three main things were announced: integrating climate risk into financial stability monitoring. Financial stability is very important for the financial sector. Second, exploring how climate scenario analysis can be used to identify vulnerabilities. And third, spreading awareness and working towards capacity building. Of course, this is one such event only. It is spreading awareness and capacity building of all of us. Again, 2021, as I said, the momentum is very recent. Momentum is really picking up. 2021, we have a department called Department of Regulation and Reserve Bank for framing the regulatory policies for the banks and the NBFCs. There is a dedicated group, Sustainable Finance Group, to lead the regulatory initiatives. It was again settled in 2021 May, about 2 years. What were the first steps? To understand what is there, to take stock of the situation where the banks are present, where the situation is, where are the financial institutions and the financial sector as it is. A survey was done in early 2022. Just to brief, what has been the finding of the survey? One, the board level engagement is not adequate. Two, the strategy aspects. Now, what is the strategy? Most of the banks which were surveyed, let me say 34 banks were covered, all public sector banks, major private banks, 16 private banks, and 6 foreign banks. Barring one or two, separate vertical and the strategic initiative was missing. Although all the banks recognized that risk management, I mean the climate risk management, is very important, and climate risk is one of the material threats which they are going to face in near future. They were disclosing, but the disclosures were not aligned to the international standards which were popular, like TCFD. TCFD is a famous disclosure uh, uh, by FSB. Task Force on Climate Related Financial Disclosures, as it is said, or GRI, Global Reporting Initiatives. Of course, the banks were taking capacity building initiatives, but they also indicated we need to do more. That was about the survey which was done early. See, whenever a regulation is to be framed, it cannot be done in isolation. It has to be a consultative process. Otherwise, it cannot succeed. So the next step was, after understanding where the banks stand, the next step was to float a consultation paper. Some of the questions I can say. What should be the immediate priorities for handling climate risk, promoting climate finance? What should be the way forward? How climate risk can be integrated into governance, strategy, and risk management in banks? How scenario analysis and stress testing, as ma'am was saying, can be used to identify vulnerabilities, or any other suggestions. Of course, these were floated as a consultation paper, which the moderator was also indicating. Then, based on the feedback that we received, huge number of feedback, let me say, more than 1,300 individual suggestions from bankers, from NGOs, from many consultancy firms, international organizations, we received. The first important regulation, very recently you would have heard, or maybe you can see if you have not seen, is the Green Deposit Framework, where importantly the use of proceeds are indicated. One or two lines on the use of proceeds. Climate change adaptation, the money would go for clean transportation, the money would go for energy efficiency, for sustainable waste and water management, for renewable energy. So all these are the areas where the funds which are raised through a green deposit would be channelized. We have asked the banks to frame their board approved policy with effect from June. So banks are already in the process. It's very recent. The circular was issued in April. Many things are in pipeline. Two things. One, you can expect a disclosure framework, a very standardized disclosure framework by Reserve Bank of India, which can say about governance, strategy, risk management. Again, based on the feedback that we receive from various banks and others. Second, scenario analysis. Now, saying it that you please do scenario analysis is very easy. To assess the vulnerabilities, saying it is very easy. How do we really do? It's very easy said than done. Those who have been involved will vouch for what I'm indicating. So there is a need to have a standardized process or standardized document for climate scenario analysis or climate stress testing. So Reserve Bank would be issuing a guidance document. You can expect it to be issued in near future. So this has been broadly the initiatives in last few years. So shall I stop here, or?
If you can continue your discussion on what measures, according to you, banks and financial institutions should
Okay.
adopt
Okay.
further the climate finance.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. 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 Thank you. The challenge is climate. What is the answer? The answer is climate. How? Let me go to the, again, the letters of climate. Let me start with C. I would suggest the first thing would be corporate governance. Banks should focus on the corporate governance. The board, the senior management, they should drive the policies, their strategies, their lines of defense, how they are going to do a risk management, how they are going to have a data repositories, their data centers, their entire policies, the staffing, the capacity building, whatnot. So that's the first thing, the corporate governance. Again, this is not that in the order I am saying, it is just to align what is the spelling of climate. L. Liquidity assessment, liquidity adequacy and capital adequacy. Banks are in the business of taking risks. You don't take risk means you are not doing a business. It is very important that you do a liquidity risk. In the adverse climate situation, there can be a pressure on the liquidity. There can be pressure on capital. So it's very important. Fortunately, today the capital situation is really good for all banks. We have historically low NPAs and all. That's a good development. So L basically liquidity adequacy and capital adequacy assessment. I, internal control. You need to develop the 3 lines of defense. We have so many bankers, professional bankers from say UP or maybe at the national level. So the first line of defense is the main business vertical. You have to be really geared up for that. First line of defense. The second line of defense, the risk monitoring, risk management. They should be able to gear up to challenge what is being done by the first line of defense. The third line of defense, the assurance function, audit, internal audit. That's very important. Within internal control only, it's very important to develop data. The data is important, gathering of data, because data is one of the major challenges which everyone is facing, banks or anyone. M. M is management of financial risks. I mean, the credit risk, the market risk, liquidity risk, and the operational risk. You need to manage the credit risk. You need to manage your investment portfolios. You need to take care of operations and, of course, the litigation risks. A, the adherence. That is compliance. You have to comply and adhere to the statutes, the regulations, and the rules framed by government from time to time. T, test the vulnerabilities. Unless you test, you will not be able to understand what will be the problem going forward, because banks have a traditional capital planning horizon 3-4 years, but you have maturity, the investments for maybe longer duration. You have to take care of the plausible future, test the vulnerabilities of your present policies. And E, the last, definitely not the least. We all are here for that. Expertise. Build expertise. Do capacity building, capacity development. Work on that. So maybe with these words, I would request moderator if any more is there, or I can stop.
Thank you, Amit ji. I'll get back to you once the other panelists also have their views. I will now move on to Ashok Sharma ji, Chief General Manager, State Bank of India, the largest commercial bank in the country, and then who has been taking a lot of initiatives in uh, climate and green finance in the country. Sir, we would like to hear from you what has been SBI's experience in extending climate and green finance, and what has been the approach of SBI to start the whole thing and then spearheading the climate finance portfolio in SBI. Sir.
Thank you, Dinesh ji. आदरणीय शाजी केवी अध्यक्ष नाबार्ड श्री मनोज सिंह ACS Command of UP in absentia, Madam Rashi Ray, Ministry of Environment and Forest, Government of India, my friend from GIZ, RBI, ECG, colleagues. Before I come to the questions that have been asked to me, try to set the context. मेरे ख्याल से थोड़ा हिंदी अंग्रेजी चलेगा. I think क्लाइमेट जिम्मेदारी है या आनंद, ये सोचना होगा हमें. भारतीय संस्कृति में प्रकृति के साथ रहना आनंद है, जिम्मेदारी का बोध नहीं आता. अब मैं बर्ड के डायरेक्टर को साधुवाद देता हूँ, उन्होंने आमंत्रित किया. आप घूम के देखिए यहाँ पे, इन्होंने नाम बर्ड रखा, एक्रोनिम किया, पर मैंने देखा बहुत सारे बर्ड भी यहाँ पर हैं. ब्यूटीफुल प्लेस. Are we capable of enjoying the beauty around us? Let us enjoy. Let us not limit ourselves to the responsibility thrust upon. If we enjoy this beauty, then we would be really doing the job that is called for. 4 questions come to my mind before I start moving to the climate portion of it. One is India have enough credit available? पैसा देश में है, बाहर से लाना पड़ेगा. Second, is India capable of lending long term? 5 साल 7 साल का लोन देंगे कि 30 का भी दे सकते हैं. थर्ड, हिंदुस्तान में पैसा महंगा है. Is it a myth or a reality? Fourth, क्या हिंदुस्तान में कैपेक्स हो रहा है? Are we growing as an economy? So let's start with the first one. So, All India Scheduled Commercial Bank outstanding, जिससे हम मेजर करते हैं what is happening in the credit. March 26, 2010, outstanding was 30.88 lakh crore or 30.88 billion INR. March 20, 2015. So 2015, it almost doubled, 61 lakh crore. Come to 22, again doubled, 118 or 119 lakh crore. Now, I have the May end data, 139 lakh crore. I have not added primary cooperative banks. I do not have the data. I am trying to add the data related to NBFCs. So I got some figure of 31.5 lakh crore as of September 22. Since banks also lend to NBFCs, and I could get this number, roughly 25% portion of the borrowing of the NBFCs comes from the banks. So let me knock off 10, 11 lakh crore. So I only add 20. So 140 and 20, we are at 160 lakh crore. Now, how does it look like? So in the last financial year, FY 2023, the money raised from equity and bond market, 5.07 lakh crore. Money from the All India Scheduled Commercial Banks, 18.19. Total money made available by the system 23.26 lakh crores. I have not added FDI. So FDI was around 2.32 lakh crores. So roughly 25.5 lakh crore per annum. This is the money available in the country. It's not going to go down, it's going to go up. So if you have a viable proposition, the money has never been a constant, it will never be a constant. For funding the climate of any country, the international organizations can help, but they will not be able to meet the needs. We have to rise, we have to create our own funds and meet the needs. Question number 2, India capable of lending long term? SBI's housing loan portfolio, roughly 6 lakh crore. You add HDFC to it, another 6 lakh crore, 12 lakh crores. Both SBI and HDFC may be roughly 40% of the market. So if you multiply and get 100%, it will be 24, 6, 30 lakh crore. Why I am quoting this housing loan portfolio? So when all of us at 25 walk into the branch, they are happy to give us a loan when we till we retire. So 25 to 60, 35 year. And this 35-year loan portfolio is 30 lakh crore. That's giving a broad number. So that means there is appetite. There is no provision from the my RBI friend. ALM permits it. Only thing, the risk has to be right. So while looking at the climate financing, are we setting the risk right? Third, is interest rate high in India? So this is a very much a debated topic. Uh, in my role as head of project funding for State Bank of India, I also interact deeply with the ministries. So maybe 3 months ago, we were sitting with the health ministry. Mr. Rajesh was the secretary health over there. ADB was there. So the debate was, should we borrow from India? Should we borrow from abroad? And the proposal was to fund tertiary care hospitals across the country. So we just calculated how both would look like. So the ADB friend said that I will be able to give you a money at SOFR plus 1.25. SOFR is roughly 5%. You add 1.25, it becomes 6.25. Now, if you were to borrow a 15-year money, then you have to hedge it because you are not government of India that जो होगा देखा जाएगा. So another 7% cost you add roughly. So we reach in the range of 13%. Now, if State Bank of India were to ask you that kind of pricing, like, आप क्या सोचते हो? What do you think yourself you are? So this kind of money is easily available in the banking system in the range of 10%. Clear advantage of 3%. Is capex happening in India? Coming to the last one. So I move a lot in the country. A lot of capex is happening in India. So if I start giving you example, I visited a glass factory. They intend to manufacture the glass for the solar modules somewhere in Karnataka. Uh, uh, the company's name is Gold Plus. I'm just missing the promoter's name. The gentleman does not leave the construction site for almost a year. मुझे याद आया, हम लोग बचपन में पढ़ा करते थे. There was a gentleman called मोक्ष गंडम विश्वेश्वरैया, जो भाखड़ा नंगल का जब बांध बन रहा था, उन्होंने तंबू लगा के वहां रहे, गए नहीं. And this gentleman which I am quoting you, he started his life as a salesman in a glass shop. We had funded him roughly 2,500 crore. Another example, I met Swamiji of JSS Mutt, Mysore, setting up a university. So my job involves in meeting the promoter, Bide Swamiji, to understand the dreams and the vision. So Swamiji is doing a capex. Move to Bengaluru, the Ola guy Bhavesh Agarwal. You are familiar with his Ola scooters by now, I hope. He has hired almost 25 PhDs in material science, most of them experts, sitting in Bengaluru doing research on material science. And one of them said to me, "ये भावेश नारियल बहुत फोड़ता है." Every see, there is our culture. Every milestone you achieve, you have that worship that you break the coconut. I was meeting the CEO of Hapag Lloyd, the shipping magnate. They have done a collaboration with one of the Indian company. He said he has got 20 billion cash sitting on his balance sheet. So he wanted me to tell where else he can invest. We are meeting steel companies, cement companies. Of course, I did not mention the renewable, the road, and the city gas distribution. So there is a tremendous activity happening on the ground. There's no dearth of activity. So there is a money in the system. So what do we lack? So I have seen we last 3-4 years. Now the ministries work with us very closely in suitably devising the policy framework, because many times what we have seen, certain gaps in the policy framework does not make the scheme or the proposal bankable and viable. We were party to the Satat scheme where the ethanol production from the MSME and those kind of things. Many such cases I can quote. So my request to the government authorities, to the bankers, my banker colleagues, to other participants here, in the very beginning, please work with the stakeholders to fine tune the policy. And in case you need, we can be of any relevance, we are available without any cost to any one of you. Let us work the policies in a way where the proposal can become bankable and viable. I was talking to the secretary DM Saja Seth. Almost he spent 2 hours with me trying to understand the difference, that why the banks do not look at certain policies, certain products. So I told him one basic thing. जो 70% पैसा लाता है टेबल पर, उससे आप कब बात करते हैं? When everything is finalized last में, please involve them. When you have a dream, we fund the dream and aspirations of the country. The last week itself, I was meeting Principal Secretary Government of Maharashtra, Abha Shukla. They are coming up with a 7 gigawatt uh, distributed RE, distributed renewable. So वो क्या कर रहे हैं? They have mapped the entire talukas of the Maharashtra, kahan deficit hai. So they have identified the revenue land there. So they have also mapped the capacity of the substations. So they intend to invite the bid to match the deficit, the substation capacity. And wherever there is a requirement for the additional land, they identified the private land as well. So during the discussions, she told me that they have planned that whatever private land they have identified. Why I am giving this example? Just to give you a color that how it makes a difference when the bankers is involved. So They've identified the private land and they will give a annual lease rent for the next 25 year to the farmer, which will be escalated at the rate of 3%. Because the thought of the government has been that the farmer should have a steady income. Noble thought, no issue. पर मैंने उनको पूछा, मैडम आप अपना घर मेरे को 25 साल पर किराए को देंगे, 3% बढ़ाऊंगा हर साल रेंट, नॉट वर्केबल. सो एज अ बैंकर मुझे पहले क्षण में समझ में आता है ये नहीं चलने वाला. सो आई सजेस्टेड, शी सेड कि नहीं 50,000 बहुत अच्छा है. मैंने कहा सब मान लिया, आप अपना घर देंगे, टेल मी. आई सजेस्टेड दैट you pay him the 25 money at single instance. ये तो क्या है, इसमें क्या होता है, we have n number of examples. Initially the money looks good, after 3 or 4 years start looking bad, then the group will come, agitation will happen, and the project will become a mess. I suggested that you pay this 25 money upfront, and if you have intent to pay him something annually, we as a banker can always design many products wherein there can be a money every annually paid to him, can be there can be exit option at 5 year, 10 year, 15, whatever you want. But please do not leave it this way, otherwise your beautiful project may get derailed. So by request again, repeating that we are available. Coming to the I continue, Ganesh, if you with the permission, continuing with the climate finance, what we do. State Bank of India, this project finance unit was set up in 95. So we are a little over 30-year old. Uh, we are roughly 100 people, one small office in Delhi and largely in Mumbai. We are organized sector-wise. So we would have teams looking after power, renewables, transportation, airport, road, oil and gas. So all sectors we have covered. And we also have empaneled the very senior retired functionaries from the government who advise us on the technical side. And whenever we are looking at any project, so for us, we do not believe that we generalize the solutions to the client. So each client has a separate solution. Maybe some can be bucketed, but we have seen that the individual solutions works much better. And solutions are available for each problem. I do not see any challenge. So I was sharing in the morning in the breakfast table with my colleague. Uh, we are funding a crude oil tanking business. So in terms of climate change, the challenge was whether the wind speed that is being seen now is the right wind speed, or how do you handle the change that might come in the next 20-25 years. So we do a lot of technical research. We take institute of design institutes and decide what kind of wind speed maximum can be seen at that particular location, so that the building should have a design to withstand that wind speed along with some cushion. We have not been calling it a climate change, or I take example of uh, hydropower funding. So whatever is the data regarding the water hydrology, we do, let us say, last 50-year hydrology study, extrapolate it suitably. So these solutions regarding the various risks, which either emanating from the climate or otherwise, they are inbuilt in the entire process. There's no way these risks are not inbuilt. How much we are supporting the green finance and the climate finance kind of thing. So just looking at the number, in the renewable side, roughly 24 gigawatt of investments have been supported by us. We are also trying to struggle that which lending we call it sustainable, which we cannot call sustainable. So far, we have identified roughly 2,64,000 crore worth of financing as sustainable. Some taxonomy issue remains. I am also a member of one task force set up for this taxonomy. So I was just discussing in the morning that suppose we fund FGD of a thermal power plant, so only the FGD portion should be termed as the climate finance, or the entire thermal becomes the climate finance. Or many of our colleagues in the steel industry are now greening the steel. So when I'm funding them, the entire thing would be called as a green steel, or only that component would be called green steel. We have also set up a specific climate finance unit to have an exclusive focus on this. So which is headed by CGM, my colleague Jesse Paul. So the bank is very, very serious about it, and I'll go one step extra. So we are not only looking at how we fund, but within us. So you may be surprised to know we have our own 35 megawatt of renewable, not lending. In our own premises, 35 megawatt of renewable. We also have, I just give a number, solar powered ATMs. We have 3,534 solar power ATMs. We have 32 green buildings. We have 8 lakhs plus trees planted. We have 46 EV chargers installed. We have many times we also take help from the MDBs. So we have so far taken support of the trade lines of around 1.6 billion from the MDBs for doing this. So this sustainable finance, green finance, climate change support is very dear to our heart. एंड जैसा हम कहते हैं कि यदि हमें इनमें जिम्मेदारी से ज़्यादा आनंद आता है तो कार्य करने में खुशी होती है. So we at State Bank of India, we enjoy being part of this process, and will continue to support the whole thing. And I would say this much, that this is a big business, good business for all of us. So it is not that I am doing a favor to anyone. It is a good business, big business to all of us. And not only we do it ourselves, but we also involve other bankers. So what we do whenever we have done a large funding, so we invite other bankers to join us as a part of the consortium. So we are also encouraging my other banker colleague to be part of this climate support story. So that is all I wanted to share as of now.
Thank you, Ashokji, for sharing SBA's philosophy and the approach in climate finance. It was also heartening to hear from you that this is an area where banks can very well do financing without considering it as a favor. It's an established commercial activity, so that is quite heartening to know that. I think it should be something for other banks also to take it like. Since you're already doing it's fine, but if you're not into this, I think this is something which I think we can take from XBA experience. Thank you, Ashok ji. Now I would move on to Vivek ji from Boston Consulting Group. Vivek has been part of BCG's climate finance activities, carries rich experience of dealing with multiple agencies, multiple projects under climate finance. So I would request Vivek ji to share, based on your experience and exposure in dealing with the sector, what are the options available in for climate finance from Indian context, and what we should do to scale up this thing, make a big impact? Yeah, Vivek ji.
Uh, Thank you, Dinesh ji. And I think the task is a little tough now because I've had such a captivating morning session and also the talks before me. I've been working in this space over the last 2 decades, but I've never seen as much passion in one room. So, I think I'll take a moment to acknowledge the chairman Nawad and his entire team, Director Bird and the entire team. This is where, you as an organization play a market maker, ecosystem enabler role. It's not just a development financing institution or an intermediary, but an entire ecosystem enabling role. I think also acknowledging the government of India. I've been seeing Ms. Rajshri Ray work, and a lot of credit on India's climate finance goes here. We've been one of the most prolific negotiators at the COP platform. So thanks for that. Also, government of UP doing some tremendous work. Very exciting space happening at the ground level. So congratulations on that. And of course, my co-panelists here, RBI, SBI, Sustain Plus. Uh, I think from an Indian context, Sharma ji कह रहे थे कि आनंद आ रहा है या जिम्मेदारी है. So I went into this space with a little joy that I didn't imagine that I'll experience before. So 2 decades ago, I set up the municipal solid waste management plant for the city of Kolhapur. And it wasn't going to make any money. It was dependent on public funds, the tipping fees that came in from the municipal corporation, and also some part of it from the sale of bioenergy and manure that went to it. And at that time, I realized 2, 3 years work X, I want to make this, self-sustaining and make a business case out of it. Like we've heard, how do you structure things right? Because there is lots of money available, but you need to structure this right. And at that time, got this project in Kolhapur, MSW project in Kolhapur, to access the first known forms of climate financing, carbon credits. And this project was the world's first MSW project registered with the UN. And suddenly, one third of revenue started coming in from this project. It made a lot of commercial sense. And I realized that the joy in structuring things right would really, really be with all of us here, and we'll be able to see a lot of impact. Because even today, when I go to that Kolhapur plant, I really feel proud, happy, satisfied as well. I, you know, on financing and especially on the Indian context, like Dinesh ji was asking, uh, we need about 2.5 to 3 trillion dollars until 2030 to meet our net zero goals, and we've been just getting about 43, 45 kind of billion dollars every year, both from domestic and international funds. There is still a shortfall in this space of 100 to 150 billion dollars. Now, how do you kind of close in on this gap? And this is where the role of bankers, the role of intermediaries, the role of financing institutions play a very important role, because there is money on the table and there is a pipeline or an opportunity which is waiting to be tapped. And somewhere in between, we need to fix the fracture of the climate finance ecosystem. And that's the role I think that all of us can play here in this room, and really sort this out for making the huge impact and the double bottom line that we heard from the chairman in the morning. I think number of instruments work and number of ways in which climate finance can support. Of course, when you look at it from a supply side, there is a whole ecosystem of institutional investors, international philanthropic funds, ODAs, and also from a retail side, if you're looking at bonds and stuff, then that kind of plays in. But what are we financing for, right? What is it that we would really need to achieve on ground? And that's where the structuring thing works well, because then the target of where the finance is flowing makes a lot of sense. I'll just give one example here in terms of how a shift from a capex to an opex model also works and helps. And that's why there is this thing about MSMEs, and that example about how MSMEs are upgrading their energy usage and energy efficiency. We did a study before, looked at multiple different clusters, and industrial motors were really consuming about 30% of electricity and emissions there. And no MSME was willing to upgrade it because, of course, it was not making any business sense because you really are operating on wafer thin margins. So how do you really put in a large capex upfront? And this is where the Ministry of Power, ESL, came in with an idea and said, okay, how do we replicate the lighting success that we've got on the ESCO model, energy as a service model, pay as you go model, to really replicate and replace pumps all across, motors all across the MSME space. And the way this kind of worked out was there was demand aggregation that came in. So the thing that we heard in morning, right? India is a very fragmented space. So how do you coordinate? How do you really bring things together? And that's where the institutional mechanism of an ESL helped, where the demand was aggregated and people were able to replace their motors, switch their motors from a low grade, low efficiency one to a high grade, high efficiency one at no upfront cost. And of course, when you structure this well, it really helps because changing a motor is very different from changing a light bulb. So that's where, how do you build in securities? How do you build in performance guarantees? How do you build in some kind of a technical assistance method to really figure out where the demand is? And all of that mechanisms really help. So from an Indian context, a combination of how do you get started with just conceptualizing what needs to be done and the pre-work that goes into it. A lot of technical grants help upfront, and once that grants are kind of used for not just looking at which technology, which business model, which financing structure, but also looking at the impact side of it, it helps unlock an entire ecosystem where then if there is a conventional business case, of course, there is private sector capital. But if it's not, then there is something called as blended finance, which is now coming in a lot into play. So how do you really bring in a strategic mix of conventional finance, private sector finance with catalytic philanthropic funding to really see whether can we offer concessional finance? Can we offer uh, to the question you had asked, right? Is capital cheaper in India? Can we make it more cheap by, mixing impact funds and philanthropic funds with commercial capital? Can we offer it even at a lower interest rate? In forestry and agriculture, for example, if we are looking at agroforestry, the gestation period itself is 5 years. But once that is done, it's a business case and people are able to, pay back and returns are very good. But what do you do for those 5 years? Can we fix and work out an instrument which really addresses that? And of course, blended finance again would come into it. So there is an entire basket of products and opportunities that can be worked out, whether it's the concessional finance that might come in, whether it's financial structuring that looks at a delayed payment mechanism, or whether it's looking at technical grants and assistance to really get the projects moving, or if it is, with regards to performance guarantees and stuff. When you look at solar rooftops, for example, there are models where we heard the secretary say in the morning, solar rooftops, everybody has a house here. It's a good ambition area for the state. But how do you do this, right? There are models which say go to every household and they say that don't invest anything upfront into your capital cost, but just pay us the electricity bill that you're paying every month for 60 months at a stretch. And we'll set it up for you, we'll invest, we'll do the risking, we'll do the performance enhancing, we'll do whatever it takes. So there are huge type of opportunities that are available, and these are then kind of trickle down so that there is private sector investment, institutional investment coming in. So I think there are different models, and I'll probably pause here in the interest of time, but happy to add more thoughts.
Yeah, thank you, Vivek ji. I would now move on to our last panelist, Ma'am Dixna Gill. Ma'am, based on your experience of working in the rural area, uh, what kind of innovations which have worked in the rural segment with regard to climate finance, and then what is the role of community in furthering this kind of innovations? If you can share your experience in this with the audience, that'll be fine.
Sure, thank you. Good afternoon to everyone, and thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of this dialogue. I represent Sustain Plus Energy Foundation and mainly also, the micro level user of climate, innovations. And the idea is to basically look at how do you reduce the climate vulnerabilities of, marginalized communities today who are the first sort of population that is bearing the brunt of climate change, and how can these climate change innovations be made accessible to them, affordable to them, where climate finance, of course, has a very big role to play. So as we've been discussing through the day, it's already been said that climate finance comes in many forms. There are concessional sources, there are non-concessional sources, there's loans available, there is grant and philanthropic capital available both at the Indian and international level. And really, what has created the base in our experience for climate change innovations in India, and I'm talking from a very decentralized renewable energy perspective, is that philanthropic capital has played a big role in creating opportunities for, um, the pilot as well as a certain level of acceleration of these solutions to happen on the ground. So what we have understood is in our interactions with commercial financiers and rural banks, etc., where we are trying to unlock these connections, is that obviously first they need to understand the business case and the financial viability of these solutions, as Ashok sir was also mentioning. Like you have to establish that case first. But because DRE solutions and any clean energy solutions are they've just started coming up. They're very cutting edge in nature. They are trying to address very specific contextual real world problems of which are being faced by one of the most difficult target groups today, where financing and receiving affordable finance is not as easy as we think it is. There are documentation gaps, there are other identity level gaps, which because of which they are not able to access these financial resources. So when we work with these kinds of target groups and we are working directly on trying to help with climate adaptation solutions, philanthropic finance and philanthropic grant level finance becomes a very strong driver for being able to create a foundation of solutions where you're able to prove at a certain level of scale, the financial viability, the operational models, as was also earlier mentioned. And this really creates the evidence and the business case, the opportunity to create enough evidence, which can then be presented for commercial finance funding as well. So that I would say is one of our key, I wouldn't say it's a innovation, but that is definitely the first sort of driver advantage that we receive from concessional funding sources. Um, but I do also feel that within this there is some process level innovations that are taking place, especially in case of being able to build some accountability around how this money is being channelized and used and applied. Is it going to the right people for the right groups, for the right kind of application? And this is essentially where again the philanthropic capital gives you the kind of flexibility around the application that can be tested on the ground, can be tested specific to regional contexts, it can be tested around various different kinds of operational and economic models. And I think the second part of your question, sir, was regarding community. If you could just
Yeah, community involvement.
community involvement in being able to do this. So, I mean, I think that is definitely a given. Ultimately, all of the climate innovation solutions, the technology solutions are being developed for community to adopt and use as end users, which means that we expect them to invest in them. We expect them to use their own money to purchase these solutions. And again, even the climate finance innovations have to be directed to these end users because they will be the takers of these loans and products. So community mobilization is an absolute necessary condition to be able to bring these solutions and test for these innovations, because what we understand on paper and in theory, when we take it to the ground, shows us many more and new dynamics which we wouldn't have anticipated. So definitely community's involvement at an early stage, or testing for products with the community in a real world scenario, is very, very vital to be able to refine the kind of products and solutions that we are taking, both in the climate finance sense as well as in the technological innovation sense. So yeah, I'll stop there and happy to add. Thank you.
Thank you, Bixna ji. Now we'll open the discussion for questioning. But due to since we already overshot the time allotted for our panel discussion, we would be constrained to take only two questions. Yeah. Any questions from the audience side? Either we are convinced that climate finance can be done, yes, or we are confused that it cannot be done. So, what do I take from the silence
for
from
the
the audience?
audience thinks, can I just my colleague Vivek was sharing. So on the renewable side, there are a lot of solutions available. I don't know. I will share with the director of Bird here. Uh, uh, we have a cell in Mumbai which takes care of large scale funding, small value. So Tata Solar, Wari, these couple of large players are running through many schemes, wherein I think the small individual can avail and there's no cost to them. That's my understanding. But I will share the literature. Maybe I'll request them and the Tata Solar guys and the Wari to connect with you as well. So solar side, I don't see that there is such a, it is a full business case. There's no issue.
Sir. Yeah, any question?
What's this?
No question. Sir.
No, yeah.
Sir,
good afternoon, sir. Myself, Dr. Surendra from BVD University. Being researcher and academicians, we have been carrying out work on the environment as per the thrust area given on the Ministry of Environment as well as the Ministry of Science and Technologies. So I would like to know, as far as the need for innovation solution is concerned, how we have to proceed in this case, how we have to prepare the project proposals, is there any formats, and which website we have to consider to prepare the project proposals as far as the need for innovative solution is concerned on the climate change.
Yeah.
So he's essentially looking at public finance or rather public funds for doing the research. Now, Government of India also has a lot of such options, and then NABARD also is now stepping into that now with the establishment of climate change fund. Uh, what you can do is that you can be in touch with your regional nearest regional office. Uh, till that time, we come out with any website. I think today on website also is getting launched, but then
No,
it's a
that is
bird's
bird website, sir.
information disseminating website only. We will definitely open up our rather crowdsource ideas for funding such initiatives. We will be doing that. Till that time, you can be in touch with the regional offices, which is available in every state headquarters. Any other options?
No.
Yeah. So now that the climate finance, there is a broad factor philanthropic funding also you have mentioned, and then there is a blended capital, then pure finance which is coming in. Unless no this commercial banks or financing institutions, that is the pure finance, come into play, we can't scale up the things. How we can force or rather sensitize, because they by themselves will be answerable to their shareholders, so they want returns for whatever activities they make, but still how to sensitize, that is one problem which we are also facing, because we as a commerce, if we are a commercial entity, that is NABARD as a commercial entity also may not purely venture into in a large scale to support such things. So now, but then the sector needs a lot of funding. So how as a collaborative manner, right from the philanthropic funding, CSR, and then comes blended funding, and then commercial finance. Of course, the other side is the public finance, which is always available there. So how we can structure this? That is one thing which we need to, on an orchestrated manner, we need to take it forward. That's what I feel, because as an entity, when we try to raise resources, we realize that whoever is parting of the resources wants market related returns, which may not be a reality now. Going forward, maybe some technology, some with economies of scale kicking in, it may happen. But then we have to reach that stage faster. How we can reach, if India at that stage, no, India, if it reaches that stage faster, then give a lot of solutions for the world. That's what I feel.
So I would close the panel discussion here. I would thank chairman of the panel, Ashish Tiwari ji, and all my fellow panelists for sharing their valuable experience and the thoughts in this audience, which I would feel, would definitely be an input for all of us to start thinking seriously about climate finance. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Uh, Thank you very much to all our panel members, especially the panel chief Shri Ashish Tiwari ji and our moderator Shri Dinesh P. I would now request our director Shri Nirupam Mehra to kindly present a small token of appreciation to panel chief Shri Ashish Tiwari ji, as also to our moderator Shri Dinesh P. I would request our Mrs. Shefali Agarwal, Joint Director, Bankers Institute of Rural Development, to kindly present the mementos to Shri Amit Sinha ji, GM RBI, Shri Ashok Sharma ji, again Ashok, then to Shri Vivek Adya ji, Ashok Sharma ji, to Mr. Vivek Adya ji from Boston Consulting Group, and Mrs. Bigzna Gill, and to Mrs. Bigzna Gill from Sustain Plus Energy Foundation. So these are again Gulabi Minakari work from, it's again another GI tag product from Varanasi district, supported again through NABARD. I will now request Mr. Shefali Agarwal, our Joint Director, to kindly sum up the discussions.
Good afternoon. Today, we had a fruitful discussion. All of us will agree with that. We had a discussion on various aspects, the urgency of the climate finance, the sectors where we should finance, the direction it should take, the challenges the climate financing has, and how to tackle it, the various strategy, as well as the our innovations which have been made and the innovations which can be done. So thank you all for coming here. Before I and we at BIRD, we propose to consolidate all the observations of the speakers as well as our distinguished panelists here and bring out a consolidated report note type, and we will be circulating it to our stakeholders so that the agenda can be moved further. And as madam said in her speech, our finance flow to ensure that finance flows to low carbon sectors as well as the climate resilient activities. Thank you all. So before we give a formal vote of thanks, since I take this opportunity of presence of our chairman, Shishaji sir, who is also the chairman of Governing Council of BIRD, as well as distinguished speakers, people from and panelists and people from all our stakeholders like banks, uh, government departments, NGOs. So we will request Shaji sir to please launch our website. This is a revamped website of BIRD. a word which is user friendly and it is friendly for all devices. And we had one this training schedule is just now all stakeholders, all people who are institutions who are coming here for training, who are using words, the training part can go there, find out what is the schedule, what is the programs which we are scheduling for. So this is the thing. Now it is available on. So so it is live now. Thanks. I thank our chairman, Sir Shai sir, to come here and Krista sir and give us global input. I thank all distinguished speakers, Manu Singh sir, ABC Government of UP, Madam Rajasri Ray, Economic Advice, Government of India, Mr. Muhammad Khab from ZIZ, Shri Ayush Tiwari ji, who was chairman of panel member, Secretary Department of Environment and Forest, Government of UP, Shri Amit Sinha ji, RBI, and Shri Ashok Kumar Sharma, CMSBI, as well as Madam Bekanag from the State Plus and Shuladia from Boston Consultancy Group. So we thank you all for giving your inputs and your observations during a roundtable. We thank our NABARD CGM, Shipini Dineti, to come here and moderate the sessions. We also thank all participants here, the distinguished delegates here to take part in this roundtable and be uh, to be a part of this roundtable conference. Thank our director, Shri Nirum Mehrotraji, for guiding us and for guiding us for successful organizing this program. And I also thank our all uh, people who have been associated with us since a long time, whose efforts have made this program a success. And last but not least, I thank our GXZ team who's based in Delhi as well as our world Lucknow to collaborate with us and to cooperate with us for successful organizing of the conference. Thank you. Thank you very much. So lunch has been arranged for all. I would request my people here